Today, at least in the mind of many Kiwis, is in deep trouble, caught in a social, economic and racial bind. This week on Good Morning Australia, we investigate the Kiwi crisis and why at least 24,000 New Zealanders a year are seeking refuge in Australia.
New Zealand's resources are 2 inches of topsoil and rain, and relatively warm rain.
Unless we face the world as 3.2 million New Zealanders against the rest of the world and putting New Zealand first, second and third as one people, then we're going to be a third world country.
I'd be foolish to say that the streets of New Zealand are perfectly safe for people to walk down, much more as I'd like to say that.
New Zealand today is a nation in change. The long white cloud is brewing into a tempest. New Zealand's white settlers, the Pākehās, and the country's native population, the Maori, are once again facing up to each other over ownership of the nation's resources.
Maori people are simply becoming relevant in their times. I think, like everyone's past, it continues to be reshaped and reformed. Maori are no exception to that.
The original landlords of the country have come calling for the rent, but now many New Zealanders don't want to pay. Instead, they're leaving the land of their birth, emulating the migratory instincts that sent their ancestors seeking a better life in a new land.
You're shifting, are you?
Yep, going to Australia.
Are you? Oh, yeah, whereabouts?
Gold Coast. Surfers, yeah.
Like everybody, eh?
Yeah.
And their primary destination is Australia. In the last 4 years, the number of New Zealanders settling permanently in Australia has more than doubled, from almost 10,500 in 1984-85 to almost 24,000 in the last financial year. The total number of New Zealanders who now call Australia home exceeds 230,000.
I say that they are simply following the tradition in the same way they bailed out of Britain, they bailed out of Canada, they bailed out of Holland, and now they're bailing out of New Zealand. The European has been bailing out of his homelands ever since the Industrial Revolution began.
But the rise of Maoridom is just one of the strains many New Zealanders are seeking to escape. The government of David Lange has had to bite the bullet on some tough economic issues, and the result is high inflation and at least 10% unemployment. And in the middle of all this, crime, from petty theft to serious sexual assault and murder. According to Interpol statistics, New Zealand has the second highest incidence of rape in the West. The Pākehās just don't feel safe in the streets. If it's not the street kids snatching handbags, it's the bikies or ethnic gangs, more than 40 in all, at war with each other.
If you look at their ancestors, they came from tribes, they associated together, they grew up together, they moved around together. And to some extent, with the young Maori of today, well, he is looking for his own people, he is associating with his own people, and he sees and feels a certain amount of comfort in the group situation.
They are the ingredients of a bitter social cocktail which many New Zealanders now simply don't want to sample.
New Zealanders of Maori descent, a few radicals are making the most outrageous claims for resources and land in this country. Unfounded in most cases, and of course this is causing resentment and in some cases fear from people of New Zealand.
In your view, do the Maoris have any claims to the resources of this country under the Treaty of Waitangi?
They have no claims greater than anybody else to the resources in this country, but we've got a funny system today in New Zealand where anybody that likes to claim they are of Maori descent has privilege over other people in New Zealand.
And in tomorrow's instalment of the Kiwi crisis, we look at New Zealand's land rights dilemma in 1980.
is staking its claim to vast tracts of the country. In the second of our series on the Kiwi crisis, Good Morning Australia's Andrew Kalupis looks at how Maoris are trying to right their wrongs.
A little more than a century ago, hills like these ran with blood. It was the time of New Zealand's great Maori wars. The battle started when the British reneged on a treaty the Maoris thought guaranteed them their tribal assets. Today, the Treaty of Waitangi is back, and the Maoris are using it to achieve social justice. For many white New Zealanders, the Treaty of Waitangi is a relic with no legal basis. But to the Maori people, it's a binding contract, guaranteeing them full and exclusive possession to their lands, fisheries and forests. To the annoyance of successive governments and conservative whites, recent court rulings have reinforced the treaty's legal status, and that is revolutionising modern New Zealand.
66 million acres reduced to 5 million acres in 148 years are the simple sums. It is simply unacceptable that people should be permitted to act illegally and then hide behind their sovereign rights. You can't do that.
There's a lot of tension in New Zealand at the moment with this. There's a gang thing, there's a government that doesn't seem to have a direction.
The resurgence of the treaty has opened a Pandora's box of Maori land claims. At least 3/5 of the South Island and about half of the North Island are or are likely to be claimed. All of the areas are Crown land. Why is the land so important to the Maori?
Oh, because it's us. It's our heritage. When I talk to a mountain, I'm talking to a place named after an ancestor. I'm talking to a place where our people are buried. I'm talking of the landscape, which is the landscape of our history, of getting on for 1,000 years of occupation.
This spectacular headland in Auckland is known as Bastion Point. It's perhaps the Maori's most significant land victory. They argued they were wrongly dispossessed, and they won. But many white New Zealanders remain resentful.
For the second time, the Ngāti Whātua people have claimed that this is their land, have received or been granted compensation, and now have the right to do as they wish with this. I would just about bet that this land in say, 20 or 30 years' time will have become some of Auckland's top real estate and have been sold by the Ngāti Whātua people.
And even among Maori ranks, the land rights issue is creating divisions.
We cannot have the assets of this country divided up on the basis of race, and it's not going to happen.
Maori leaders are realistic enough to concede they don't expect all their claims to succeed, but they do want recognition they were wronged and compensation.
Something between zilch and $1 billion, and that's going to depend on our negotiating capacity. But what we primarily want is to have settled our right. If our rights are recognised, then we can sit down and talk about the discount.
The Maori claims extend beyond the land to New Zealand's lucrative ocean fisheries. It's an export industry worth $650 million. But whatever the outcome in the long term, the result is not worth waiting or paying for in the view of many whites.
And violence are facts of life in many of the world's major cities. There are also unwelcome features in modern-day New Zealand, once the Sleepy Hollow of the Pacific. As we report in the third part of our series on the Kiwi crisis, crime is driving many New Zealanders out of their own country.
These are the most feared people in New Zealand today. They are the gangs that many Kiwis now blame for turning their country into one of the most violent societies in the Western world.
Today, of course, people are not content with using their fists. They'll use their beaks, they'll use pieces of timber, they'll use knives.
It's 5:30 and the streets of suburban New Zealand are not safe at night. During the day, this shopping complex is just like any other in Australia, but at night, it's transformed into a fortress. These shops have been violated so many times, the owners board them up at night, just like they do in Beirut. But here, there are no soldiers, there is no gunfire. Here, the war is against crime.
New Zealand today has the unenviable distinction, according to Interpol, of having the second highest incidence of rape in the world. Since 1980, there's been an 81% increase in serious crime. There are 47 gangs in New Zealand with over 4,000 members. With names like Satan's Slaves, the Tribesmen and the Mongrel Mob, they are well armed and hide from the law behind fortified walls.
Generally speaking, they're dressed alike, they all look alike. They commit criminal activities at night time. They're difficult to identify. Witnesses are becoming rather disenchanted about coming forward to identify these people.
The dominant gang in New Zealand is Black Power. Despite the frightening criminal history of many of its members, Black Power today is becoming politically aware. Many members are unemployed, and that, according to their leader, is where their problems begin.
We just go back for 5 months. We're waiting for a contract through the government, and just went sour. So my guys went and robbed the post office. You know, it's just natural.
Ray Harris himself is a convicted felon. He served 2 years for rape. In addition to their battles with the law, Black Power isn't afraid to take on other gangs vying for territory.
It's probably more like a football match, you know, Australia versus New Zealand.
But nobody dies on a rugby field.
Oh, probably heart attacks. Yeah, these things happen. You know, it's good you brought it out because there has been a few killings, but it's no shock to the world.
Of all jail inmates in New Zealand, a staggering 25% of them are gang members or their associates. While Maoris account for approximately 12% of the total population, they represent 48% of all jailed inmates.
As far as I'm concerned, they commit more crimes.
The rising crime rate, anxiety over Maori land claims and falling living standards is forcing many white New Zealanders to leave their own country.
If you're not getting your clothing swiped off you, you're getting your wallet swiped off you, or you're getting banged on the head.
I had my handbag stolen from my office at work. They come up the lifts in the buildings, and if there's no one around, they'll swipe handbags. So this happened to me. I wouldn't walk out in Wellington at night at all.
And even for the country's top lawman, New Zealand is not the place to retire.
I'll move initially anyway to Queensland.
Can you understand how some people find it depressing that even the country's top lawman is leaving?
Oh, not in the least. I'm sure there'll be a number of people saying, I wish I'd have made that decision myself some time ago.
In tomorrow's report on the Kiwi crisis, we profile two families who are bailing out of New Zealand, bound for the safer shores of Australia. It's terrible to see a society disintegrate like that.
It is terrible, and it's terrible for all the many decent Kiwis in Australia. I know one school, I know a kid started school there and he said he came from New Zealand, and the kids said to him, well, prove it, steal something. You know, so it's tough.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Tough also for a 12-year-old